Hey there, my name is Will Stuck and welcome to today's program. So what I thought we would do today is I thought that maybe I would teach you how to do one of my all-time favorite things. You see, ever since I was a little bitty boy, hold on, I said that wrong. Ever since I was a little bitty boy, one of the things I've loved to do is to draw. Now, I drew all kinds of stuff, but probably hands down my favorite thing to draw was cartoon characters. Whether it was trying to recreate cartoon characters I saw in comic strips in the newspaper, or watching animated TV shows and movies and trying to learn how to draw those characters, I love doing that stuff, but I really found that I loved making my own cartoon characters, just out of my imagination. And so today what I thought we would do is I thought I would teach you some tips and tricks for drawing your own cartoon faces. Now we're going to be focusing mainly on human cartoon faces. In fact, that's really what we're doing today. But if you practice the tips and things that I show you in today's video, you can definitely apply that to creating some cartoon animals as well. So all we're going to need to get going is you need to get something to draw on and something to draw with. Now, to keep you from getting in trouble, I'm going to say avoid using the walls to draw on. Yeah, I would grab some paper, copy paper, notebook paper, whatever you got handy. Grab some paper, and then you'll need something to draw with. Now you can use pencils, colored pencils, you can use markers, crayons, ink pens, whatever you've got handy. I'm gonna be using a dry erase marker and a dry erase board just because I'm gonna be erasing stuff a lot to show you today. But really, it doesn't matter because today it's about practice. We're gonna be practicing some tips and tricks that I'm gonna show you so we don't have to make this look professional. So you don't need any fancy sketching pencils or anything like that. Just something to draw on and something to draw with. All right, so get your stuff, let's get drawing. Okay, so before we get going with actually putting pencil to paper, let's talk about just one little piece of advice I'm gonna give you, not just for this particular program, but in the future when you go to practice your drawings. In all the drawing classes and cartooning classes I've taught over the years, there are a lot of people, sometimes myself included, that want to draw small. Now, the reason I always did it was because I wanted to try to squeeze as many drawings on a piece of paper as possible, so I would draw tiny. But when you're learning some new technique or new style, I'm gonna recommend you actually go bigger because for today, for instance, we're going to be drawing cartoon faces. And if we have to try to squeeze all of our facial features in to a tiny little space, it's just gonna be more difficult. So do yourself a favor, and today, and like I said, in the future when you're practicing new techniques, go a little bit bigger. Don't go so big that features are gonna go off the edge of the paper, but don't be afraid to use the space. Use the paper you've got. Okay, so now that we've got that tip out of the way, let's talk about head shapes. When I first started drawing cartoons, and even now when I'm doodling, a lot of times I start with the eyes, because the eyes are where we get the emotion of the character we're drawing. But if you're going to create a cartoon character that you hope to draw again down the road, maybe doing a different emotion, it's not gonna help us out if we start with the eyes. So we're gonna start with that head shape. And we want to think about the overall character, not just the way they feel. So it's more than the eyes. What I mean by that is, let's say we're going to draw a young character. We are probably not going to give it a really sharp, strong jawline at the bottom. It's probably going to be softer. So if we're going to do younger characters, we're liable to do circles and squished ovals. Or, you know, if we're wanting a softer feeling character, we're not gonna have hard lines in there. Now, when our characters get older, we might still wanna use ovals. Maybe we still don't want them to have sharp features, but now we're going more of an oval where it's been squished on its sides, not on the top and on the bottom. If we do want a character with a strong, sharp jawline, we can always go with squares. And if you're worried, you know, I don't want my character to have points in the corners of his head or her head, don't worry about it, because really these shapes we're coming up with for the head shape of our cartoon character, they're really just frames. These are the foundation. So we're starting with this, but we can add things to it. We can take away from it. It's just a good way to start your character down the right path to get to the desired result you want at the end. So for instance, with this one, maybe we want this strong jawline that's kind of a short square shaped head, but maybe the hairstyle we put on this character is going to soften those corners, and then it's still a square shaped head, but you don't have those points. If you want a strong jawline and a skinnier face, maybe we draw a rectangle. Maybe you're drawing a character like Phineas from Phineas and Ferb. Well, in that case, you have a triangle as your base and you build onto that. Now, personally, the shape that I have been using the most lately with my cartoon characters is kind of a combination of those soft shapes like ovals and circles and the more rigid shapes like the squares and the triangles. But I have been doing kind of these weird bean shapes lately. Something like that. So it's kind of still squishy and soft, but you can tell there's a jawline in there. Or if I'm drawing a chubby little baby, or maybe a super heavyweight pro wrestler, and I want a big, thick, soft jawline here, like a big, thicker neck, I would do like a pear shape like this. So picking the shape of your head will help you come up with that end result you're wanting for your character as far as their overall look. So the next thing we're going to talk about after head shapes is we're going to talk about guidelines. When I used to check out books from the library when I was growing up about how to draw people, how to draw animals, whether it was realistic or cartoon, typically in those books they would show step 1, and they would just show a bunch of shapes, like a bunch of circles connected or a bunch of like ovals connected. And then on step 2, they would start putting all of these lines inside of those shapes. And I never understood why they were putting all these lines in there, or I didn't understand it for the first couple of years. I kind of just ignored them and drew the details after the shapes. And when I found out what these guidelines are for and their purpose, it really helped my drawing a lot. So before we go into talking about different styles of cartoon eyes and ears and noses, I want to just take a couple minutes and tell you what guidelines do. And I want you to go ahead and practice this with me. So on your piece of paper, you can flip it over or get a brand new piece. I want you to draw 3 ovals or circles on your paper. Now they don't have to be exactly like the one next to it, but you know, kind of in the ballpark. And that one's not, that looks like a weird D. Anyway, but draw 3 ovals or circles on your paper. And I want to explain to you what the guidelines are. There are guidelines for everything. The guidelines on the shapes, you can have the several, and when you get a lot of them in there, it is for proportion reasons. What I mean is, when we say proportion, is we're talking about size relationship. So we want to make sure that the nose is the same size every time. We want to make sure that the eyes are the same size every time. If you ever look, besides just in drawing books, but if you ever watch videos of cartoonists or animators sketching out cartoon characters like you've seen in TV and movies, you will see them put these guidelines in there. And the more guidelines they use, the more they're relying on those to create a consistent character. We are only going to focus on 2 guidelines for this particular video. We are going to focus on the vertical guideline, and we are going to focus on the horizontal guideline or the eye line. Basically, the vertical guideline, the one that goes up and down, is an imaginary line that divides your face in half. Now, in this particular instance, where it is just straight up and down right in the middle, this means our character we're drawing is looking straight ahead. They're not looking any to the left or to the right. They are looking straight ahead, because this imaginary line goes down the forehead, right down the nose, right across the mouth. But if we were to say change where that line is, say we curve it this way, and the reason we're curving it is because with the curve, it's showing that this isn't just a flat shape. This is actually 3-dimensional. It's like a sphere. So if I just drew a straight line, well, that doesn't really do it. We're actually wanting to put that curve in there so that we can tell that this is a curved shape. But by doing this, our character's looking that way. Real quick, let me put some eyes and a real simple nose and mouth in there. So with this one, right down the middle, our character's looking straight ahead. If we put the eyes on their proper side of that guideline, and we put our nose in there, and we put our mouth in there, Now our character's looking that way. And the more curved and the closer to the edge you get, the more they're turning, until eventually it's a profile to where they're facing one certain way. So that is the purpose of our vertical guideline. So let me show you what the horizontal guideline is. I called it the eye line because sometimes you'll see it listed as that in different drawing books. And it is basically telling you where the eyes set on your character. Now, besides telling you if your character's looking up or down, it can actually dramatically change the way that your character's face is built. So we're gonna go ahead, let's just do one right in the middle for this one. Now, when you look in books, sometimes they'll say that you set the eyes on top of the eye line, but I think that typically messes me up a lot. So I go with what other books say, which is to put the eyes right on the eye line. So this is a character looking straight ahead. This is gonna be just an average shaped face like this. But if I was to move that eye line or that guideline a little bit higher, it changes the overall look. This particular face looks a little bit older than this face. And if we really lower that guideline down, that horizontal guideline down lower, and we put those on, and you'll notice I'm going lower without curving. Well, now I'm doing the same types of eyes, the same types of noses, the same types of mouths, but based on where that guideline is, it kind of gives the age of our characters. So, vertical guideline tells you if they're looking straight ahead or to the left or the right. The eye guideline can help you with age, but it also will tell you which direction your character's looking as far as up or down is concerned. So let me erase this again. Okay, so we'll just go right in the middle again. If it is straight in the middle, then our character is not looking up, our character's not looking down, it is just looking straight ahead. But if we still have our character not looking left or right, but we curve this line up and we put our eyes on that, and we move our nose up, plus now we're gonna see the underside of the nose instead of the top part of the nose. This shows us that our character is looking up. If we curve it down, kind of squishes everything in. Now our character is looking down. So practice those inside of the ovals you've drawn. And I wanted to show you just one more time an example of the guidelines. We're gonna curve over to the side, and we're gonna curve up like this. If we space our eyes out on both sides, we put our nose in and our mouth in. Now our character is looking to the side and slightly up. So that's the point of these guidelines. Now we're going to talk about facial features. Okay, so let's start with eyes. Now, when it comes to doing cartoon characters, whether it's the head shape, any of the facial features, things like that, one of the things you have to remember is that a cartoon is a simplified drawing. So when I say that, that means any facial features we put in there, we're gonna make them really simplified. Even in realistic cartoons, like anime and things like that, you'll notice that everything is simplified down. So when it comes time to drawing eyes, you don't have to worry about adding all of the super detail that comes with drawing realistic eyes. We can do just dots. That's perfectly fine. You can do dots with lines, so like lines over the top. And by changing where those lines are, kind of changes the emotion of our character. You could do dots with two lines, and that gives it a totally different vibe. You could just do the two lines and change where the dots are. You can go with something like this any day of the week and still get across the emotions that you want to get across with your character. So this is probably the simplest type of cartoon eyes that you can do. But let's say you want to add a little bit more, I don't know, 3-dimension to it, or make them a little bit shiny. I'm going to show you probably my favorite thing to do when drawing eyes. Oh, besides just doing dots, and even sometimes when I do dots, let me go ahead and put one here. I will either not color the whole dot in, or I won't actually make it a complete dot. And the reason I do this is to make it have a highlight. Basically, wherever the light is coming in, it's putting a shiny spot on the eye. That makes the eye look a little wet, a little bit more real, a little bit more 3-dimensional. So even if you're just doing dots, you can do that. I personally like to put my eyes inside of eyeballs on my character. So we can do any kind of shape we want on those. We could just do round eyes. Now, if the character is looking straight ahead, your eyes might not touch, but let's put some eyes in there. And again, I'm gonna leave part of it not colored in, and that will make it look like those eyes are shiny. Or your eyes can touch. Maybe it's not just 2 circles, but it's kind of a weird shape like this. Totally fine. Again, it's whatever your preference is. Maybe your character's eyes overlap. Like if they're looking to the side, and sometimes even when they're not looking to the side, like on cartoons like, say, The Simpsons, or comic strips like Garfield, a lot of times they'll do the round eyes, but then they'll have them stacked like this. And so even if our character is the common way we see it, the eyes are like that, and then they've got their eyes turned towards us. So the eyes aren't, say, on the edge. They're kind of in the middle looking straight at us. But you can also do other shapes. You're not limited to circles. That bean shape that I said I like to do, you'll notice this a lot in cartoons for certain faces. A lot of times they'll do them on scared faces because they're kind of treating the eyeball like its own character. When you go to do eyeballs like this, you have to think about the emotion you are trying to convey. Now, I've already mentioned, if you ever watch a video of animators or cartoonists at work, you'll see the guidelines. But I encourage you, if you ever watch a video like that, or you ever see photos of an animator's desk or a cartoonist's desk, look to see if you can find the mirror. A lot of times, cartoonists and animators will have a mirror on their desk, and they'll make faces in it because they want to see what different parts of their face end up doing when they, are feeling a certain way or trying to make a certain emotion. And eyes are the same way. I encourage you to look in a mirror. Say you're trying to draw a character angry, look at a mirror, see what your eyes are doing, and draw it that way. You're trying to, okay, well, what would my character look like sleepy? Look in the mirror and draw what you see. And the easiest way to convey that emotion with eyeball shapes is with eyelids. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm just gonna do 2 circles again, like this. And you can do this along with me if you'd like. There's 3 ways that I draw eyelids. The first is just a straight line or just lines inside. So for instance, let's just start off with an wide open pair of eyes. And actually, before I draw the eyelids, something else that I just thought of, the size of the pupil, the black part, is also going to dramatically change. Typically, that changes on the amount of light, but if we go from something like just those right in the middle to something like this, that is typically somebody who's scared or shocked. And if we do really big circles like this, maybe that's right before they're getting ready to cry, or a really cutesy character. So the size of the pupils can change it too. But back to eyelids, back to what we were talking about with eyelids. When we put the pupils in the eyes, we want to see what we do with the eyelids. Now, you can either just do lines inside, like I said. So if we wanted to do angry, we could just draw a couple lines like that. If we were to change that, let's do somebody who is sleepy. Well, that eyelid's gonna be halfway down or a little more than halfway down. And one of the things you have to remember is now we can't see all of that pupil. We can't see all of that circle. That's going to change it. And we could add a little eyelid on the bottom. Now I think it looks more sick than it does sleepy. But you can just do these lines in there. They don't have to be straight. You could curve them. You could curve the eyes down like that. That's gonna give it a totally different feel. Or curve them up even. If we curve them up, then that means the cheeks are pushing the skin up and making them like chubby cheeks. So we can also move the dots around within that, but this is one way to add the eyelids to help convey the emotion, is to draw them on the inside. The second way, using the eyelids on the inside, is just doing one extra step, and that is to take the eyelids outside of the eye. So instead of being restrained inside the circle, it goes outside the circle. And we can just leave it like that, or if you add a little circle on each end like this, it makes it look like the eyelid is a piece of skin that has gone down over the eye. So that's the other way. One more thing about eyelids, then we're gonna move on and talk about mouths. And again, this doesn't matter if they're touching or if they're overlapping, these eyelid tricks. The other way is to just not make it a complete circle. So let's do the angry eyes again, just because that's a common one we're used to seeing. And when we drew it with eyelids, we had it like this. But what I'm talking about not drawing the whole circle, is doing that. Or leaving a little bit of the circle. And it doesn't matter if we're going just top, if we're doing top and bottom eyelids. You can do a combination, that's a combination, but if we erase that bottom part, that's another way of doing the eyes. Let's say we wanna go up this time, and make our character sad. And we erase those. That works too. So either adding just the lines on the inside, make the lines go outside just a little bit, or erasing the part of the eye that the eyelid is covering are the three common ways to get that emotion to come out of the eyes. Another quick thing you can do is add wrinkles and lines underneath the eyes to help sell your point. Seeing these sad eyes reminded me of that. You could just darken the edges, make one line heavier than the other. But looking in the mirror, seeing what your eyes are doing when you're making or feeling a certain emotion will help you draw that onto the paper. Okay, let's talk mouths, because mouths are probably the next part that I've heard the most complaints from people saying is hard to do on a cartoon character. When we're doing cartoon faces, if it's a closed mouth, it's the thing we've been doing ever since we were little bitty, is just doing closed mouths like that. We can add things to these mouths, like the little lines. And basically, when we put lines on there, it's an indication of cheeks. It's basically the smile pushing the skin on the face. So something like that is just telling us it's a smile, and it's kind of moving the cheeks a little bit. If we do it a little bit bigger, it's actually showing us that it's really pushing the cheeks in, so it's a little bit bigger smile. And if we actually curve them out like this, then this is pushing the cheeks up almost like they're chubby cheeks. So if I was to draw a cartoon version of me, those are the kind of cheeks I would have. So when we're doing closed mouths, easy peasy. It's just those lines, and you can add these little things on the outside to help you out. Or, of course, I almost forgot that one. You gotta have that mouth in there every once in a while. The reason that I've had people tell me that mouths are hard is when it's an open mouth. Now, if it's an open mouth looking towards you, again, look in the mirror, see what shape your mouth makes. Whether you're moaning, or you're surprised, or you're happy. Just trying to get that shape down, and you can just color it in if you would like. But what's going to make your mouth pop a little bit more is to add layers to that. So the reason people say mouths are hard is when they're open, it's basically drawing a hole. And if you were to put teeth on your characters, there's nothing wrong with doing your standard cartoon teeth, except maybe that's not what you want to do. Because if you really smile and look into a mirror, you will probably notice that your teeth don't go flat across like that. There is a gap in there. So you can put a gap in. You could just put top teeth and a tongue. Even with this surprised and shocked mouth, putting a tongue in there is going to add to it. Now for the tongue, we're just doing a lowercase m. And in this one, let's do that lowercase m and I'll show you a fun little trick. We could always take that out a little bit and erase it. And now that mouth went from being kind of a sad mouth to maybe somebody who's really, really thirsty. But try to think in layers. So if we've got an open mouth of a character, we're gonna see some teeth. It probably won't go all the way to the edge. We might see bottom teeth, might see a tongue. We might even see all the way back into the back of the throat, depending on the type of character you're doing. But look to actually see how many teeth how much teeth they're showing. Think about your character. Maybe they don't have a full set of teeth. Maybe they've got an open mouth like this, and they just have teeth like this. Well, you still might want to put in that tongue in there to give your character a little bit more depth. One more quick note about mouths before we move on to ears. But what if the head is turned to the side? I'm gonna show you a quick little hack or cheat that a lot of cartoonists do if you watch cartoons or look in comic strips. And that is this shape right here. It is a straight line, or you can also curve it, I guess. And then the opening of the mouth. And if it's SpongeBob, if it's Mickey Mouse, it doesn't matter. If their head's turned, there's gonna be a little bit of that top lip and the opening of the mouth. You can change the shape of that bottom part, but it's this overall basic shape. And then you just throw in your tongue in there if you want it to have the tongue. Maybe it's got teeth in there like that. You could do that tongue that came out again. Maybe this is somebody riding on a roller coaster screaming. But it doesn't matter which way they're facing. That shape will help you draw a mouth that is turned on a head that is turned to the side. Okay, let's go ears just before we do noses, because ears and noses are both really gonna stick to what I said about being simple. If we were to draw realistic ears, we might do something along this way, because ears have a lot of folds and creases in the cartilage. That's still a simplified ear, so that would still work for your cartoon character, but I'm gonna encourage you to go even a little bit simpler. A lot of times cartoons will just do a C shape or a tall C shape like that. Sometimes they leave it like that. Sometimes they'll put something like that on the inside, or a little squiggle like this. I personally have just been doing that top fold of skin on the ear lately when I've been doing mine. Sometimes I'll bring it down like that even. But ears, we can just keep those simple little C shapes. Now, if we were drawing realistic noses, I will tell you again from teaching drawing classes that that is where a lot of people struggle, because a nose is just a bump with a couple of holes in it. So if we're drawing realistically, we have to rely on shadows, shading, highlights to get it to look like a real nose. But for cartoons, your cartoon character doesn't even have to have a nose. But if you want to put a nose in there, it could be something simple, like what I was doing with those guideline heads. You could get a little bit more elaborate and maybe make it more of a round or maybe a V. You could do this, which I always called the mushroom. I've seen this shape a lot. I've also seen one that's similar to that, but they add a line on top of it. And if you're going to do that, I personally think it looks better if after you do that, you add a little bump coming up like this. So that's a perfectly good nose. Maybe it is a pug nose, just kind of a upturned little nose. Well, you might go something like that. Maybe you can only just see the nostrils. But you're really just going to simplify, look for where the dark shadows are on your face, on your nose, and add those lines in there. You could also give them a clown nose. One of my favorite cartoons, The Grim Adventures of Billy and Mandy, it's kind of Billy's nose right there. And then Mandy didn't have a nose. So 2 examples of noses right there, noses or lack of noses. You could make it more of a side profile nose, which is still fine if your character's facing forward because it's a cartoon. But if they're turned to the side, you can give them a nose like that. On these side noses like this, sometimes it's fun to go like that, but then add a little C at the end and make them have a nose like this. It can be that triangle on the side. Basically, it's just got to be simple, but you're going to find, I would recommend try out a couple different noses on the character you're creating till you find one that you really like, and then pick your nose. Okay, the very last thing that I want to talk to you about with creating your own cartoon characters is hair. Now, whenever we draw a cartoon character, I do a lot of school visits, and like I said, I've had a lot of classes that I've taught, and a lot of people want to put the hair on top of the head. There are some hairstyles where it's perfectly fine for the hair to be up here. Maybe this person does only have 6 hair follicles sticking up, but that's not really great hair unless it's specific for that character. So the thing you want to remember when it comes to drawing hair, ready? And I want you to say this, I'm going to say it, then we're going to say it again, and I want you to say it with me. Hair goes on the head. It doesn't just float up there. So when it comes to drawing hair on your characters, think about your hairstyle and remember that it goes on the head. And the biggest piece of advice I can give you when it comes to drawing hair, other than that it goes on the head, is you don't have to draw all of the hair. You don't have to put every single piece of hair in there. If you're doing a balding character, well, then you can do. Like if you were doing Homer Simpson, you totally can just do your 2 little pieces of hair like that. But let's say you're drawing somebody with a full head of hair. Well, you would put your face in there on your character. We'll just go back to our simple little guy again. And I'm going to think about the hair as shapes, blocks of shapes, not individual hairs. So I know that this particular person I'm going to draw, their hair goes like that on top and on the sides, but it's not just going to go on the sides because we're going to be able to see some of it on the front. And then we would erase those lines of the head. And the hair is on the person. Now you can go through and add some accent lines if you want, but again, that is just showing us the hint that there is hair without us having to draw every single piece of hair. Instead of going on our character, we can just do these basic shapes and still get the same impression. Let's do a little bit longer hairstyle so you can see that. We're gonna draw another head shape. And we'll put some eyes in there. We'll do a different nose, like this. And how about we'll start with something like just really long flowy hair parted to the side. So we'll go from this side, maybe the hair goes down like this and we see a big chunk. And we see some coming down here like this in a big chunk. And maybe there's some hair in front, so we wouldn't see that anymore. And then the hair just peeking out on this side behind the ear. And then, since we've got a gap there, we could put a little bit of hair coming down, but we're looking for those overall shapes. What if we wanted to do like braids or pigtails? Well, again, look in the mirror. If you don't have hair for braids and pigtails, then find a picture that you like of somebody with braided hair. Maybe they've got braided hair and bangs. Well, if they've got bangs, their hair is going to go down in front like that. There's going to be a little bit of hair on the side. We'll put their ears on, and then we'll just do the braid coming down from behind the ear. But in all of these cases, we are going to make sure that our hair is shapes and that it is on the head. So that's how we draw hair. Keep it simple in blocks. Don't draw every single bit of hair, and hair goes on the head. Well, that's it, everyone. I hope you had fun learning some tips and tricks for drawing your own cartoon faces. Now, remember, if something I did today doesn't make sense to you, or you didn't like the way that I did something and you want to tweak it and make it your own, good. That's what I want you to do. You should discover your own style, because ultimately, when it comes to art, my opinion is if it's making you happy, then you're doing it the right way. But hopefully, I taught you some tips today that you can apply to your cartoon drawing. And if not, hopefully I at least inspired you to pick up some paper and pencil and to create your own creations. Now remember, to get better at any art form, doesn't matter if it's drawing, dance, music, whatever it is, you have to practice. So I'm gonna give you 3 pieces of advice to improve in any art form. Again, doesn't matter if it's playing a musical instrument, dance, singing, drawing, painting, whatever it is. Here we go. First one is the one I've mentioned a few times in today's program already, and that is you've gotta practice. Practice. The more you practice, the better at it you're going to be. The second thing is look to experts. So whether that's watching videos to teach you how to do your artwork, or maybe going to like a live in-person demonstration, any of that stuff where you can watch somebody who you look at their work and you like their work, anytime you can get that opportunity to watch them, it's going to make you better. The third thing is expose yourself to all kinds of art in the area you're interested in. You like drawing cartoon animals? Well, maybe get a book or watch a video on how to draw realistic animals, because that's going to change the way you draw your cartoons and you might be happier. You want to learn how to play your musical instrument better? Listen to all kinds of music. It's going to make you better. So if you can do those 3 things, it doesn't matter what we're talking about, whether it's art, visual art, or performing art, you're going to get better at it. Now guys, I really, really do hope you had a fun time today. I know I had a good time. Anytime that I can sit down and draw, I'm happy. So again, practice, practice, practice. Get some paper, something to draw with, and keep on drawing. I will see you next time.